Good evening. Welcome to the ShadowTrader Video Weekly for Sunday, April 28th, 2013. All right, kind of a bullish week this week. I want to focus just first on the S&P and where we closed in relation to this pattern here. I've been talking about this in the blog, and as we sold off 2 weeks ago to the ascending trend channel, which came down right to it at the 50 MA here and turned, you can see that when we started to rally, which we did pretty much all this past week, when we started to rally, which we did pretty much like all this week, we towards the end of the week closed above what I call the left shoulder of this head and shoulders pattern. This would be like the left shoulder, this would be the head, and this would be the right shoulder. And here on the left shoulder, you can see we actually closed this daily bar above it, and then since then we rallied further. At first glance, it's possible that you could look at this 3-day pattern here as a swing high, and I'm going to switch to Spider here because it's easier to see with the gaps. But in reality, Friday's action was really not very weak at all. I mean, we didn't really roll over at all. I was saying on the Tasty Trade show with Brad that I thought the most likely scenario here is that we would rally somewhere to this area of, where these shoulders are, and then consolidate, go to the side, and then move higher. And it seems like that's what's happening, because certainly Friday the market had every chance to pull back. It was a little bit weak off the open, and it didn't follow through to the downside at all. And you can see that even though we have a swing high here, meaning that we have lower highs on either side of a higher high in the middle, the market wasn't able to close in the S&P below the prior day's low. And then, not that it has to be, for a swing high, it's still a swing high technically, but we didn't close below it. And let me just get rid of this stuff here. I'm looking at diamonds here. Same thing. And the Dow actually was positive on Friday, and it closed, well above the prior day's close. So you can see that pretty much on all the patterns. So again, just to recap, I think the path of least resistance here is probably to go sideways and then a little bit higher, and I'm going to continue to be watching the channel here. There's not that much to do or say really about it here, because notice that in relation to the dominant channel, the market is really dead in the middle. So this week really could be a crapshoot. I personally think that it feels like it wants up, but it could also, it could just as easily be down. If it is down, then what will happen is that the trend channel will be back in play, and more importantly, the prior supports here at the 1540. And at that point, if it was to retest them, I would have to think that it's pretty bearish and it would go through them. The reason being is that when we pulled back here to the trend channel, this wasn't the first time. It was actually more like the third time, because you have to go back here and see here on April 5th, you had a strong pullback right to that same area. That low was 1539.50, and right here there was a pullback low that was to 1538.50. So these are very equal lows, and it's been tested multiple times. So if we were to break through there, obviously that would change my tone a little bit and make it a little bit more bearish, but right now that's not in play. If we look at the profile towards the end of the week, here's the last 3 days, and I'll just close this so you can see the rest. Really, nothing very bearish, I would have to say. Notice that here we had a very balanced day on the 24th, which was Wednesday. Then you had a rally to the higher high on Thursday. This is pretty good extension here. Also, there continues to be lack of excess high here in the profile, sort of ending the up auction. And more importantly, look at Friday. Very squat type of profile like Thursday, so you had balance. And look at the top. This is one of the worst highs we've seen in a while. Extremely poor high, where you had early periods touching it and then late periods touched it as well and weren't able to break through. There's absolutely no excess here. So this tells me that you probably will go a little bit higher and repair this at some point. We also have a virgin point of control here at 1585.25. That's just an area where the most volume traded in this particular session, which was Thursday, and it's usually a target, basically. So it's just something to keep in mind. And I think if the futures get to there, then it opens the door to higher prices as well. Okay, speaking of the profile, don't forget that I will be in Chicago this weekend at the James Dalton Seminar. I'm looking forward to that. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Some of you that follow my stuff have signed up, and I look forward to meeting you there. All right, let's get into some sectors here. I wanted to click through some sectors here just to kind of show you how the overall picture here still feels pretty bullish. At the top of the list is obviously home builders, which had an incredible week. But I don't really want to be looking in the rearview mirror here. I want to put this on a weekly and be looking forward. Just to give you an idea, because when we're faced with this chart here, and this is important, where we're in the middle of the channel, we have to look at other factors to give us an idea of whether it will be up or down. And one of the things to do is just to look at sectors and see how do the sector charts look maybe on the weeklies. Are they more bullish than bearish? Does it look like the next week is going to carry forward and be more of an advance, or are they toppy, or are they going to pull back? And to me, I mean, they look pretty strong here. Certainly home construction will probably go higher this week. Let's look at drug. That's been a leading sector. Kind of a doji this week on its daily. Really bullish, still above the 20 MA and catching some support there. Biotech doesn't matter much. Let's see, healthcare, which has been leading this rally, has been very, very strong. Did make a doji, kind of even with the last week. So looking a little bit, toppy on the weekly, but on the daily, still fine. It's the same exact thing. Transports, all right. Look at the pattern here. It's across the top here, and then across the top here. And to me, it's bullish. I mean, you have this extremely bearish action here, and you've come right back to it. This is kind of like sellers shut off under here, right? When you have the big action down and then you crawl back. Utility, extremely bullish, right? Especially on the weekly. Just continues to make new highs. I think this is really a bubble. Obviously, all the money keeps going into these dividend-type paying stocks. This is, of course, reason to believe that the rally is on its last legs, but it can still go a little bit higher. But yes, I do agree that you should be looking at these things as kind of a warning sign, because these are the types of sectors that rally at the end, not at the beginning. Semiconductors had a very bullish week, taking back the prior weakness. I mean, they still have room to move to the upside. Banking on the weekly, bullish engulfment of the prior week, so I think it could go higher. And these are the sectors that are important that really drive the S&P, such as the financial ones, such as broker-dealer as well. Looks pretty bullish to me. Insurance, same thing. Looks quite bullish. Chemicals, same thing, actually closing right up at that high there and pushing higher. Railroads, which are part of transports, are actually stronger than the transport sector, and they look good. So you see, when you just look at dailies and weeklies back and forth of all these charts, nothing here really seems toppy. Like if we were in the middle of that range and every single chart looked like this, and I would say, well, you know what? Look at these utilities; they really just haven't had a pause. It's just straight up for so many weeks on end, or the sectors were just looking like they were running into resistance, then I'd have to look at it differently. But everything pretty much still looks okay here. So given that we're in the middle of the channel, I would say that it's status quo. All right. I don't have that many ideas for next week. One that I'm focusing on is Amazon. They reported on Friday, Thursday night, and so then this was the action on Friday. The stock just got decimated and came into some area here where there were some prior lows and supported a little bit, but really I think closed kind of weak. You can see here it sold off into the close and is really just a couple bucks off those lows. And what I'm looking at is this channel here in Amazon. I'm going to be very interested in initiating a long position down in here if the stock can get to it, right around the 245 area. Because I think the channel is held up really well, and would definitely get a pretty playable bounce there. Even if it was just a bounce just to the middle of the range, I'd be happy with that. That would probably be my first target. If I could get the stock from 245 to about 257, that would be great, and then maybe trail a stop and see if you can get to the top end of the channel. But that's one that I'm focused on. Last week I told you about a Google breakout, which worked out really well for a couple of days. If you recall, I was telling you about the Google breakout that looked like this over the top of this line. And stock was really, really strong here on Wednesday, and then a little bit, and then gap up open on Thursday, and then just kind of sold off since then. If you're playing this, I was playing this much more short term. I had a short term trade just like day trade, but if you're playing this for the swing, according to the comments that I was making last week, you may or may not be stopped out. If you're not, you have to be really careful that you don't get price action too deep into this middle candle. As I was saying, that remember, when you have the big body candle, you shouldn't come back more than halfway. Also, the 20 MA should support. If the market stays strong, I would expect Google to kind of fake everybody out, catch a bid somewhere down in here and then ratchet up higher. So that could be another one that's also in play. And last but not least, I made a big to-do last week about the Apple earnings, which came out. They reported on Tuesday p.m., and it was basically a disappointment, at least for me, because the stock did absolutely not much of anything, right? On the day after the earnings, the stock, I think, was down 60 cents. And since then, it's rallied decently, and it's moved right to here, which I think is going to be really key next week. This is going to be kind of a do-or-die area for Apple, because the prior lows here are at 419 on March 4th. And then over here, they're at 419.68, which was on April 5th. They're about a month apart. Now you can see Apple's rallied back up to that level on an increase in volume. So if Apple can get back over that 419, I would think that it kind of changes the tone about the stock and maybe takes some of the bearishness, out of the name. Everybody's been the sentiment has kind of been really, really bad. For a short-term trade early on Monday, I'm going to be looking for the stock to open either flat or somewhere up, somewhere near this area. I'll be looking to short that 419 to 420 area for a day trade early on. I'll see how, if that works out, how far back I can get it to roll back. If it only rolls back a little and we start to see consolidation here in Apple this way, then I think the stock would be a buy for a swing play to sort of disappoint all these bears and maybe move up here, possibly even as high as 470 up to the prior resistance there, okay? But we shall see. All right, so that's the situation. That is the state of the markets for the week. What kind of action I'm looking for next week, plus a few trade ideas there tacked on at the end. And to those of you that will be joining the Jim Dalton seminar, I look forward to seeing you this Sunday. All right, on behalf of myself and the entire ShadowTrader team here in beautiful Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I wish you good trading and good night.